Thank you all for coming out. This is a wonderful turnout. As many of you, I don't know if this is your first time here, this used to be the old gym. With the renovations this year, you are standing on 6 feet of styrofoam. We had the gym level up to match the other room, so they came in 7 truckloads of styrofoam with gravel, rebar, concrete, and then beautiful floors. We now have heat, air conditioning here. Years before, if you ever been with us, 5 minutes before a presentation, we would have Tarzan go in the corner and shut off the blowers so that everybody could hear us. But we welcome you, and we welcome you to Casa, and we thank you for taking your time out on this special thing. I don't remember, this is the year, 1958 was the year I was born. So, but my godparents' daughter perished in the fire. So I know it's very important to all of you that are here to hear the stories, and I know there are people in the audience that have special stories regarding the fire. So again, welcome to Casa. Thank you for your continuous support. Dominic and his wonderful staff are putting weekly things together. So to bring you back, we are the cultural center. We need to have our stories been told. We need to continue our culture. We need to continue our heritage. You know, every generation we lose a little bit more. You know, I have 2 boys. I have a 40-year-old. I said, Frank, you know, let's do wine like Nono used to do. But Ma, isn't it just cheaper to go to Caputo's and buy it? I mean, it's not the same. And he's right, it is cheaper. But it's the principle behind it. You know, we don't do Labor Day, the canning of 22 bushels of tomatoes. I mean, that stuff is over. But my mom's 94. She still tried to convince me this year that she wanted a can. So, I don't know. We'll see next year. Maybe on her 95th birthday, we'll do some canning. But anyway, but thank you for your support. Just a little note. Tomorrow, as you notice, we're decorated a little kind of double task. We have our Christmas village here tomorrow. At noon, we have Mass. We have the live nativity that's presented during Mass. And then after that, in the room next door, we have all of the Italian delicacies, roasted chestnuts, fried dough. After the Mass, in the back, they will be selling food and meatballs, hot dogs, and Italian sausage. And then we have carriage rides from the very first building when you guys first pulled in. There'll be carriage rides there. There's 2 beautiful teams of meals. They're just wonderful with the children. We have Santa, Mrs. Claus, La Befana, of course, and crafts for the kids, but it's an all-day event. So if you have time tomorrow, please join us. It's a free event, but we just want to showcase what we do best. So again, thank you. I'm going to turn over the mic to Lynn, or Dominic? Dominic. So again, enjoy your day. Thank you.
Hi, welcome to Sabato Culturale. That's Cultural Saturday. Every Saturday, we at the Casa Italia Library have something programmed that's cultural. And today we are saving our stories. And saving our stories is the motto of the work that we do at the Casa Italia Library. And if you are inclined, please go to our website and write some of your memories if you're so inclined. And I want to thank Linda and Stephanie Maffiola, who've done such a wonderful job in putting this together. Usually we have 25 people, but today we have a big crowd. This is the biggest crowd we've ever had. The first time we've had occasion to use this room. And isn't this a great room? Come back. Thank you.
Our guest speakers, can you come on up and sit with me over here at the panel? I'm very reluctantly, I see. They're creeping up.
I'll do like a little encouragement. Yay!
I'll introduce everyone in a few minutes. These are all precious people to me, and there's precious people in this room. If you're here today, it's because I know you've been affected by the fire somehow. Maybe you were a student there, maybe you were a parishioner, maybe you're from the neighborhood, maybe you were a child living across the country, but still had nightmares about the fire. I've heard so many stories of people being affected. So we welcome all of you, and I welcome you because it's 67 years after the fire, but it never goes away. And even me, like, I think I've been in therapy, I've talked about it so many times, and I think I have it together, and when I start talking about it, it's like yesterday. It's like I was 3 years old again. So it never goes away. You know, whenever I hear therapists talk about, oh, you can work through that trauma and close the door on it, and the book is closed. No, that's not it at all. What happens is the older you get, it becomes part of your life, and you reflect back and say, ooh, yeah, that really did affect me. I see how I acted this way or that way, and it affects us all, okay? Not just us who were in the fire, but everyone. It affected everyone in Chicago, it affected people across the United States, it affected the whole world. So I'm really glad that you're here today remembering with us, because even if it's so many years later, we take great comfort in that others will remember with us. So, just a couple of things now, practical things. If you need to use the bathroom, it's out the door here. There's a beautiful bathroom, so go look at that. Exits, there's exit over there, okay, and over there. If something gets overwhelming for you and you feel like you want to take a time out, just you can kindly leave, go sit, come back when you feel like it. In the back, we have coffee, panettone. Sister Morelia made some cookies. My cousin Nancy, wherever she's at, she made some cupcakes. I know some people donated some. Water, we got it. No wine, sorry, a little early for wine. So please go and enjoy the table. Get up when you want and go help yourself. And I'm just curious, before I introduce these lovely people, in this room, how many people is anybody here seated that was actually in the fire, was a student that day? Okay, we have a couple of people there, okay. How many people were from the neighborhood? Okay, lots of you. How many were just, like you're just, any firefighters? Let me ask that. Any firefighters? Oh, thank you for joining us. Anybody who just remembers it, maybe was a child? Okay, so it looks like everybody, in some fashion, we were all in this together. And what I learned is there's no pecking order. I used to always feel like I wasn't in the fire. I don't have burns on me. That's what I heard from people. You weren't there, Linda, you were in preschool. But it impacted in our household in a different way. And I'll talk about that later, okay? So my story is more of an emotional story of just how our life was, how it was changed and colored. And I don't mean to sound down, because there is a beautiful end of the story. We have a resurrection story with all of this. So before we start talking, and I am already talking, but I'm just gonna ask that we be very respectful of our speakers here today, because this is a sensitive topic for us. And I'm very grateful that they're sharing, okay? And we have communication tools. I know many of you will probably say, ooh, I want to share this, or I'd love to tell my story. If you can kindly follow our rules, you can tell my daughter and I are educators. So we're going to pass up no cards and pencils. And if you have a comment that you want to share, or you have a question to ask us, if you can write it down and give it to Stephanie. And then we'll have time at the end where we'll go through some of the cards, and hopefully we'll get through all of them and talk as a group. Now, if anybody knows Professor Candelori here, Dominic Candelori here, you know how he asked me to put this together with him, and it started as a seminar, just a morning seminar. But it ended up as a 3-day workshop right now. He kept on saying, oh, Linda, you gotta talk to Tony Romano. Oh, Linda, you gotta talk to blah, blah, blah. And he just kept on adding more and more. So we're gonna try to keep it in a good time frame so that you could all go home before dinner today, okay? But if you feel you need to leave, you leave. We're gonna have like a 10-minute break in between. We're gonna be, oh, there we go. Thank you, my daughter's so good.
Oh, should I do
Take
the
care of
agenda?
yourself. Go ahead. Could you go to the next one?
Oh, okay. Here. Oh, wait, so sorry.
Let's go back here.
Okay.
Our
panel and then agenda? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let me introduce our panel first, okay? So first we have Tony Romano, who I just met myself, and Mr. He wrote a wonderful book, and he'll tell you about it later from a detective's point of view, right? And I just got my hands on it. Unfortunately, I only got to chapter 2, but it's really well written. So he wouldn't tell me the ending of it, so I gotta go home and finish reading it. Mickey Lombardo, or I should say Professor Lombardo, and he was, am I getting this right? You were with CPD as a detective, is that correct?
Yeah.
And he ended up going to school, being a sociologist, and he was a professor at Loyola in criminology, correct? So he has a very interesting perspective, and he was there the day of the fire. Okay, Bill Quinlan was in 4th grade, and am I getting it right, were you an IT guy?
Yes, at Loyola University.
At Loyola, look at all these professors here, at Loyola University, okay. So he was at Loyola, and he will share his story. Interesting thing about Tony, Tony, you're the one, Tony lived at 1600 West Ohio, and when we were talking, guess what? He was friends with my cousin, well, my Uncle Louis and his kids. He says, hey, do you know Joe Maffiola? I go, yeah, but there's 2 Joe Maffiolas on the same block. So he is friends with the older one. So you know how the world is so small, it's so funny. So we were calling him this morning. He didn't answer, but we're gonna connect them together. And then we have Matt Plavonich, he's a retired Chicago Police Department detective, and you worked as an investigator for, was it the county? County Sheriff's Office. And you were on, tell me the show again, I forgot. He's a celebrity here.
America's Most Wanted.
America's Most Wanted, because yes, not as the criminal. Okay. But really, thank God he went the way he did, because he could have been one of the criminals. Okay. And Matt was in 5th grade. You were in 5th grade. And we met, I remember how we met. There was an ad in a newspaper years ago that, not an ad, I put out a press release for the mass, the memorial mass. And his wife, I'm gonna share this, your wife called me, Chris called me. And she said, my husband was in the fire, but he doesn't talk about it, right?
Yeah.
Because none of us talked about it. So that's when we first met, years and years ago. That's like over 30, 35 years ago, I think. Yeah. And last but not least, we have honorary sister Grace Ann. Grace Ann was in preschool like me, and she lost her brother like me, Victor. And she lives now right by my mom's house on the northwest side of Chicago, a couple of blocks away. That's where they moved. Grace Ann got very active in Our Lady of Angels as of today. There's Franciscan Sisters of the Eucharist of Chicago. And she's an honorary sister there. She basically lives there helping them. And she'll tell us what's going on. She'll give us an update of what's going on at Our Lady of Angels right now. Okay. Before we start, what I'd like to do, you know what today is, December 6th? Every Italian knows it's the Feast of St. Nicholas, right? Beautiful day. So I thought we'd say a prayer. Well, I'll say a prayer. I didn't copy it down for all of us to read, but I'll say the prayer for St. Nicholas and children before we start, okay? And it's, Dear St. Nicholas, we pray that through the intercession, your intercession, you will protect our children, keep them safe from harm, help them grow, help them become worthy of your sight, and help us all become worthy of our sight, of Christ's sight. Through Jesus Christ our Lord, amen. And my daughter put up the screen here just to remember why we are here. Today we're remembering there were 92 that died, 92 children, 3 sisters, BVM sisters. But it wasn't just the 92 children, there were also 1,500 other children in that school that was affected, that saw things that they should never have seen, that lost their community, that were moved out of the neighborhood and had to go to different schools, that were very deeply affected by the fire. You want to go to the next screen, son?
Yes, and I just had for just a pause to.
So we're just gonna pause for a few minutes, just to look at all the names. And looking at those names, you could see it was a very ethnic neighborhood. It was an immigrant neighborhood. We Italians might say it was an Italian neighborhood, but that's not really true. It was Italian, Irish, Polish, Ukrainian, Slavic, German, you name it, it was United Nations. I remember having all kinds of friends. And we were immigrant kids, we were first generation. So it was like a real different mix in the neighborhood. You know, it was really a beautiful culture together. So we're gonna start with just what the neighborhood was like prior to the fire. And it was really a tight-knit neighborhood. A neighborhood where, you know, you probably have the same stories. You're out till midnight playing tag on the streets, your parents are out there in the chairs, and we're all just enjoying each other's company, you know, like, kind of like that. So PBS had a documentary that you might have seen, Angels Too Soon, and they updated it last year, or in 23. We're just gonna show you, we'd like to see the beginning clip of it, and it just really talks about the neighborhood, just to get the flavor of it. What's that? Oh, my daughter reminded me, cell phones, if you could just silence them, if you haven't already, and please be seated. There's coffee in the back if you'd like.
Welcome, welcome.
Welcome, welcome, we just started.
Chicago was booming in 1958. It was the world's busiest steel and rail center. The nation's leading industrial, breadbasket, and livestock area. Mayor Richard J. Daley launched an ambitious plan to rebuild Chicago's downtown.
There is a huge amount of energy going on in the city. A lot of things are happening. The population hits a high water mark. It's over 3 million.
Nearly 2 million were Roman Catholic, making the Archdiocese of Chicago the largest in the country. It guided a collection of 262 parishes, each covering 1 square mile of the city.
Chicago has been called a city of neighborhoods, but it's also a city of parishes. People knew where you were from by what parish you belonged to.
One of Chicago's most vibrant parishes flourished on the city's west side, Our Lady of the Angels.
They'd ask you where you're from, and you'd say Our Lady of the Angels.
It was a close-knit parish. You'd walk down the street and people would say hello.
I remember playing at midnight, and all the neighbors would watch each other.
Everybody knew each other. People helped each other.
It was absolute home for us.
Our Lady of the Angels opened in 1894 to serve the neighborhood's Irish Catholics, but by 1958, the parish was largely Italian.
I didn't know what a blonde-haired person was anywhere. I'd see them on TV, but
Typical Catholic Chicago, everything was parish-oriented, and you felt the sense of belonging.
Serge Usetta's family emigrated from a small Italian town near Trieste after World War II. They settled 3 blocks from the church and felt right at home.
Sundays were busy. Our Lady Angels Church had masses every hour. They were packed. If you didn't get there early, you didn't get a seat, you had to stand.
You could smell the pasta sauce strolling down the block after church.
Sunday afternoons were largely family get-togethers. That was the feast of the day.
Even Carlos Lozano's family, one of the few Mexican households in the parish, picked up the custom.
we try to eat like once a week, you know, guess our mom, gonna make spaghetti today.
Families in this working class area lived in bungalows in traditional 2- and 3-story apartment buildings.
A lot of the moms and dads either worked in factories or in services trades.
Luciana Mordini's family was literally fresh off the boat when they moved down the block.
It was overwhelming. I mean, I'd never seen cars, I'd never seen buses. And to walk out on Chicago Avenue and there were people everywhere.
Chicago Avenue was comprised of a lot of shops, bakeries, some restaurants, but all Italian American.
Oh my gosh, that was heaven to us. Everything we needed was there. Our favorite bakery was Ancona Bakery. They made the best Italian bread.
There was the Alamo Theater, which is a great old-time Chicago movie theater.
And if I did my chores and I got my quarter, I had money to go to the shul.
Jonathan Kane lived above an Italian deli and found artistic inspiration not at the movies, but at church.
I was in the choir, and I really fell in love with the conversation in Latin with the priest. The way the priest would sing, we'd sing back to him. I thought, God, I would love to do that.
Kids could always count on a smile or a nickel from a young priest named Father Joe Onibene.
I love Father Joe. Loved Father Joe. I still do. He was the nicest man.
He could throw a football farther than any of us. And the girls thought he was very handsome.
Your competition man.
While the church commanded Sundays, activity shifted to classrooms on weekdays.
Catholic education was so important, particularly to immigrant Catholics.
My American cousin took me to meet my new teacher, and I'm standing in front of the room and I wet my pants right in front of the whole class. So that was my introduction to Our Lady of Angels. I did not speak English until probably the beginning of 5th grade. The nuns spoiled me.
The Sisters of Charity of the Blessed Virgin Mary were the foot soldiers of Chicago's parochial schools, dedicated to teaching and easy to spot in their long black habits.
They taught in almost 40 schools. I may be biased, but I would argue that the BBM sisters were some of the best teachers.
But even the best teachers had their hands full after World War II, when over 1,500 baby boomers swelled the school. Some classrooms held up to 60 kids.
We take turns sitting down during class. We'd have to get up, you know, and they said, okay, shift. And then I get out of my seat, give my seat to somebody else, and then we probably did that 3 times, 4 times a day.
Uniforms were required. You know, a tie.
Navy jumpers with white blouses, yeah. The nuns were strict at that time. You had to do what they said. I mean, you know, they came around with that ruler.
Their initials were BVMs, and we called them blackmail monsters. That sounds terrible. But that was the worst thing we said about them. That wasn't too bad, I think.
Sisters did their best to educate children who weren't raise angels.
The boys were bad. I give those teachers a lot of credit.
I laugh because I guess I wasn't the most well-behaved.
I happen to be really into rocket ships and astronomy, so I'm bringing my little plastic rocket ship. I shot it off in class and almost broke the clock.
The nuns, after school, they weren't going to their kids' soccer game. We were their family, you know. They were very close to us.
Thank you, Stephanie. So you got a good taste of the neighborhood and how people were really tight and together. And I thought maybe some of our panel could share some reminiscences of the neighborhood, you know.
Very true.
Oh,
It's
You gotta
exactly.
go to the mic.
here, no, you know
Okay.
what? Dominic, here we go.
Well, I can speak loud. I mean, I agree with everything.
Here you go, Robert.
I agree with everything that's been said in the film. I was born and raised in that community, like everybody else. We eventually moved. I think the fire destroyed the neighborhood, which those of you familiar with Italian Chicago, the neighborhood's very seldom changed. It's only today that you start to see change. You gotta look for Italians on Taylor Street. You can find some on Grand Avenue. Our neighborhood's gone, destroyed, and your average person will tell you it was the fire that destroyed the neighborhood. How could God allow this to happen? People moved away, especially if you lost family and friends. It was too heartbreaking to see the church, to walk those streets. And Chicago Avenue declined. It declined, I don't want to say real fast, but didn't take long when the neighborhood wasn't the neighborhood anymore. Matt, you want to say anything?
Sure. Well, my story actually started December 1st, 1958 at 2:30 in the afternoon. I was in a split 5th, 6th grade in the cheese box. It was known as the cheese box because it was the smallest room in the school. It was a library that was converted into a classroom because of overcrowding. But it was about 2:30 and my nun was giving the 6th graders their homework assignments and everyone started to get hot. We assumed Mr. Raymond had overstoked the furnace and it was getting uncomfortably hot. And then one of the girls yelled out in the front of the class to the nun, "I see smoke in the transom." We had a glass transom that used to open and close. Great for ventilation at the turn of the century, but in a fire, it's up high and it's glass. And the nun ran to the door, opened up the door, and the entire hallway was engulfed in flames and smoke. So she said, "Everybody stay seated." She ran to the back room, the back door, and checked her vestments. She used to put her keys on her rosary belt, and she had forgotten the keys that morning. She was running late. So with that, she tried to ram the door. It was a 5-panel oak door, solid oak. That didn't budge. She got the 2 biggest kids in the class to stand at the end of the row, and on a count of 3, run and throw yourself into the door. It didn't budge. She ordered, the glass transom broke, and that smoke poured in like big bales of black cotton. And she ordered everybody to the back door. And what saved us was, she had the presence of mind. We were right across the gangway from the rectory. She had 3 potted plants, and she threw the potted plants against the rectory, and then one of them broke the window. And Mrs. Nora Maloney, the caretaker, came out, and the nuns screamed, we're trapped, the school's on fire. She woke up a young parish priest by the name of Charlie Hund. He came out, and I actually remember how he was dressed. He had baggy khaki pants on. He had a gray brown bomber length jacket, and I don't know how else to describe it, but a day goatee. I don't know, I'm still,
Yeah.
that's what we always call him. And he said, I'll be right up. So that's why we didn't have many jumpers. We thought we were gonna get rescued. Well, that room deteriorated so bad. Everybody was on the floor trying to get what good air was left. And the heat was intense. And I know it was everybody screaming for their mom and their dad. I think moms were 2-to-1 to dads. And some of the smart ones were praying to God, God, just help us, save us. And with that, I just went into another world, and I basically saw a vision of my kitchen table. We lived in a 3rd floor walk-up apartment, and my mom and dad said, this was Planned Parenthood. The dinette sets came with 6 chairs, so we had 4 boys to fill it up. And it was assigned seating, and I had a vision, an aerial view of my kitchen, and my seat was empty, and everybody else's head was down, and I realized how much I would be missed. And with that, I actually felt a separation of body and spirit. I said, you know what, in a few minutes this body is going to be burned to a crisp, but I'm hovering over my body. I don't know if the Holy Spirit came or what, but it was the most euphoric time I've ever had in my life. And the thing that really hurt me, I realized our nun always said, keep your soul ready because you never know when God's going to come and take it. Boy, she was right that day. And I got so euphoric because of this. I can't believe it. And then within the same breath, the worst part for me was not being able to say goodbye and thank you for all the love, the sacrifice, and the devotion my parents gave me. That hit me harder than dying. I just wanted to thank them for everything they had done. And with that, we got a whoosh on the back door. Charlie Hunt had come up, and he told me, I talked to him afterwards, he said, I got up there, Matt, my clothes were singed, I've never been so hot in my life. I reached up to turn the knob, and then I burnt my hand on the doorknob because it was steel. He said, I was bailing on you. I'll be honest with you, I was going to save myself. I was on my back, I tried to kick the bottom panel out, think maybe you guys could get out. It didn't work, so I was bailing. I looked to my left on the floor, and I saw a face, and as it got closer, I recognized it was Jim Reiner, the janitor. And I said, have you got a key to this room, Jim? He said he pulled out a key room the size of Cleveland. He reached in, he reached up, put that first key in, and the rest is history. We basically got rescued. I was the second to last kid to get out. The last kid got out, and the nun and Charlie Hunt were on the floor, turned to the room, and he said, what's the matter? She says, I haven't been counting, I don't know if they're all dead. Boom, that room exploded, and knock on wood, we were the only classroom, North Wing, 2nd floor, not to suffer a fatality. A bunch of kids treated for smoke inhalation, a jumper that was treated, but we were the only room to make it out. Once we got out, they directed us to the church, and once I realized there was a head count at the church, I just wanted to get home. When you've gone through something like that, you just want to be home. So I ran to the front of the church, took a left turn, and that's where all the carnage was, in the north alley. I stood there in amazement. These are all kids I had gone to school with in the window, some of them jumping while they were on fire, some of them getting pushed, and I never forget the sound of the thud hitting the ground after a 27-foot jump. So I stood there for a minute or two, and then I just ran home. I don't think I stopped or anything. We lived close to a mile from the school, and I ran up 3 flights of stairs, And I pounded on the door, and my mom said, "Who the hell you been fighting with now? Your hair's all messed up. Where's your jacket? Get in here." She grabbed me by the ear. She said, "Mom, the school's on fire." "Oh, that's a good one. The school's on fire." And she said she looked at me and she saw all the smoke in my nose, and she got a whiff of the hot smoke. And all I could say was, she gave me a big hug. "Mom, it's really bad." So, and it was. So,
Thank you.
anybody else?
Matt, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt, for sharing that with us. That's really a profound story. You know. And Matt went on to do really good work all your life with that knowledge.
Oh, yeah.
And every time I hear your story, you know what, I hear something new. Like when you said about above your body, that you saw.
Oh, yeah.
That, and you wanted to thank your parents. So
I
you
was
came
on
back
my
with
way,
that.
believe me.
Yeah,
The body was gonna be shot, but the spirit was still intact, so
yeah,
there is a level beyond this.
yeah, definitely, you were there.
Right.
But you got
I
to
was
come
there.
back.
It's pretty nice.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Matt. We're gonna go back just for a second to the neighborhood. Pre-fire, how much fun it was. Like, I'm thinking of Ancona. I always have food on my mind. So you know what comes to me? Ancona's Bakery. Anybody from the neighborhood remember Ancona's Bakery? Every Sunday after Mass, you come out of Mass, there was a line out the door for the bread and the cannolis, right? That was like just a meeting place. Bernie Brothers, wonderful cupcakes. I'm stuck on the food. Jim and Pete's, right? All of that. And just the wonderful memories we had. Like as a child, I just remember, a lot of you probably have the same memories, when I was saying before, being out on Friday nights when it was 110 degrees out, or it felt like 110 and we didn't have air conditioning yet. And so the families would sit outside talking, everybody was, I mean, I remember a block, my parents were friends with, there's Mexican family, Polish, Ukrainian, Greek family. It didn't make any difference. We were multicultural. And we all enjoyed each other's company.
There was a commonality.
The commonality, that we
Because
were all
nobody wanted to be in their house or their apartment. So we stayed in front, the parents, the kids, and they compared notes. Everybody wanted a better life.
Yeah.
Everybody wanted a better life for their kids. We were all in the same boat, and nobody basically had anything back then. I mean, I think that when I was 12, we got a box fan, and I thought I died, and what the heck? And all it did was blow hot air on us. We're on the third floor, walk-up apartment. So
oh my gosh, man, you just
there was a commonality that we all shared.
Yeah.
And once air conditioning and TV took over, I don't even know the guy next door. What do I,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it changed.
And the fire hydrants. Do you remember the fire
Oh, yeah.
hydrants? Oh my gosh. How many of you guys remember that? The boys would like unscrew them and the fire. I apologize to the firefighters here because I know it's a pain in the butt. But boy, did that cool us off. And that's, everybody played on the corner. I was on Ohio. We lived on Ohio and Springfield. So right on the corner, we had a hydrant there. That was our park. You know, that was our swimming pool. So it was just like that camaraderie.
Right.
You know, the friendships with each other.
Friendship.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, it was just like a wonderful era. It was a wonderful time. When I think back to my childhood, what's really interesting is, though, after the fire, I see everything in black and white or gray. That's my memories. It's like gray and black and white. But when my family stayed in the neighborhood till 1969. My parents waited till I graduated. We were like one of the few remaining white families on our block. And my dad didn't want to sell our house. He really wanted to stay there, but my mother insisted that we had to move on. And I'm glad she did, because he wanted to rent the house, and it would have probably been unsafe for him to go back in the neighborhood, and collect rent. Little 5'1" Italian man, so. But when we moved to Belmont and Cumberland area, and to us, that was the rich suburbs from the west side. I had gone to Notre Dame my freshman year, and I was transferred over to Mother Guerin. And I'm gonna tell you, when I think back to my childhood there, Everything is in color. Everything seemed light and breezy. We had a second chance at life again that I'll talk about in a few minutes. But before I do, we have a clip from John Kunster, who is unfortunately no longer, God rest his soul, no longer here with us. But he wrote a wonderful book, and we're going to be raffling it off. And did everybody turn in your names? Yeah? Okay, why don't we, let's have one raffle right now. I have 4 books to raffle. So.
Do you have the cards here? I have a bag you can throw it into.
Okay, here we go.
Okay. Okay. Do a little
We got to
shake.
shake it up.
Shake, 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 shake.
Okay, our first winner is, this is Remembrance of the Angels.
Would you like to do the puller? Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Don Gabriel. Okay, there's Don. Okay, could you bring it over to me?
Yes. Okay.
All right.
Oh wait. Okay. Last arm. Okay.
So John, we're very lucky. Dr. Candelora had invited John here years ago. Was it 2012 maybe?
11.
11. Oh, it's right there in front of me. And
Yeah, he died a few
also-
months later.
Dominic, you have such a profound effect on people. Anyways, that was supposed to be a joke. It was a bad joke.
Okay.
He's looking at me in shock right now. But John was a lovely man. I met him, in the 90s. And interesting thing about him, he lived in Evergreen Park. His wife had passed. He raised 8 children on his own. He had started writing the book To Sleep with the Angels. And then reality took hold, raising his children. So the book went on in an attic for many, many years, till he pulled it out again. But I had the honor of playing his wedding, his second marriage. He married a Brazilian woman who was with the Claretian order. And I played cocktail music too. And the funny thing is, he got married in a church called Most Holy Redeemer, very Irish church, Southside Irish. Years later, I interviewed and accepted a music director job there. And I kept on feeling like, I think I've been here before. These instruments look familiar. And it wasn't until John's granddaughter was in my choir, Maggie. And I put it together. You know, isn't that wonderful how God works? He has a mysterious hand. You think you're in control of your life, and he drops different people in your lives. And I'm friends with the Kunster family to this day. So we're gonna show a clip of John. They wanted to be here. His children wanted to be here, but they had a family obligation. And they sent me a text to read to you. So I'll read it afterwards, but let's just listen to John. It's about a 25-minute clip, and this is when he came to speak at the Casa Italia.
Getting up in years, how's your memory? He says, my memory's getting better and better. I'm even remembering things that never happened. But I remember things that did happen regarding our day at the Angel School. Very vividly, even though the first book was published in 1996, I remember vividly the day that happened. I was at the Daily News, I was one of their reporters, and Bill, I forget his name, Bill Mooney, our rewrite man, was on the phone to his ear. He was just a few feet away from me, and he yelled out to everybody else in this room, we've got a school fire on the west side. All heck broke loose at the meeting in his office that day. Photographers were rushing out, reporters. In the same way with the other three newspapers in Chicago, sometimes the Tribune and the American, as well as the TV stations and radio stations. There was a big rush to the location of the school fire. And I'm quite sure you people know It was the third worst school fire and school tragedy in our nation's history. There was one in Texas that killed over 400 children because of a gas explosion. And there was another one in the early turn of the century near Cleveland that killed over 100 kids. But this, of course, was the worst tragedy of that type in Chicago. And it affected so many people. So after I started talking to a number of photographers and reporters, I said to myself, someday somebody has to write the complete story of what happened there, why it happened, how it happened. And it took me years before I really went to work on it. I felt in the beginning, so close to the date of the tragedy, it would be hard to go to talk to parents who lost their son or a daughter. So I waited quite a long time, until the early 70s. I started to put a lot of the information together by visiting the parents who lost their children, by talking to the surviving nuns, by talking to Father Mulvaney and another priestman and Father Hunt who were there that day afternoon, to get the first-hand story, plus as many students as they could, plus firefighters. And I was fortunate enough to get the interviews of the three lieutenants who came in the first companies for the school fire. There was Engine 85, the lieutenant on that engine was Stanley Washnicki, Polish man. Ladder truck 35, and I was able to talk to Charlie Kamen, who rescued about 7 or 8 kids himself. And I talked to members of Squad 6, which were the first ones in there. And I talked to Jack McCollum, who was trying to break the falls of some of the kids who were jumping out windows when they occurred. The first alarm came into the Chicago Fire Department at 2:42 in the afternoon. One of the problems I was trying to solve was why that fire was not recognized earlier than that. And finally, through all the interviews I had with different investigators, I found out that the fire was set by human hands. One of the investigators told me that. He said there was nothing down there in that stairwell on the northeast corner of the school where the fire actually began that would cause the fire, except that it had to be set by human hands. One of the investigators told me that. So, in any event, I proceeded to interview these lieutenants. Washnicki, I went out to his house, and he broke down and cried. This was years later after the school fire. And I realized then how much he was a professional firefighter. And many years later, he actually broke down and cried of what he saw there and what he had to do. He got bawled out by Fire Commissioner Bob Quinn because he was on the engine company that Quinn thought he should have been breaking the falls of kids starting to jump on windows. But his job as a firefighter, on the engine company, is put water on the fire, which he did do. And he felt terrible that he was kind of criticized by the fire commissioner for doing what he was supposed to do. And then Charlie Kamen, he came in on the ladder truck, which was actually the second ladder truck to get in there, but it was right at the start of the fire, where he got a ladder in. The school, of course, was built like a square U, and in between there was the north wing where all the deaths occurred, and the south wing of the school, and an annex in here. And in between was like a cement courtway, cement ground, remember that? And on the north side of the north wing was hard ground there. And second floor windows, second floor classrooms where all the deaths occurred. It was 35 feet from the ground. Picture yourself as a young kid in 4th or 5th grade looking down how far it must have seemed to make the jump. But a lot of kids did, they jumped. The firefighters that were coming in there trying to break the falls of these kids, they even had to get a net to try to break recall some of the things that we met, some of this and that. And all these were stories that you just don't forget, and how it affected all those men, all those firefighters. And the second book I wrote, besides To Sleep with the Angels, was titled Remembrances of the Angels. And I went and talked to the students who were there that they were now adults in their 60s, and all of them were very helpful, and they told me exactly what they did to save their own lives. And I remember this one little girl in 4th grade. She said, I threw my glasses down there. I was up on the 2nd floor in the middle room where most of the children, the largest number of children died in that middle room. It was a 4th grade room. And she said, I wish I was down there with my glasses. And she finally jumped and she broke her back. I talked to an older person who was in 8th grade at the time. He said, the only way I was going to save my life was to jump out that window. And he jumped out, and he, believe it or not, he landed on the concrete in the courtway. And he said, I just damaged my shoulder. But he said, I'm sorry I didn't kill myself. So all these stories, when you talk directly to people who were involved, they were there. And I told them, all of them were quite successful in life. One of the men that I talked to went to Notre Dame, University of Notre Dame. He became a CPA, has his own CA group firm. I said, what did you learn about that fire? And what was the lesson you took away? And he said he jumped out the window, saved his own life. He said, I tell the young fellas in my office, he said, drink the last drink, dance with the prettiest girl, and guess tomorrow you may die. So that's what he learned. Life could be very short. And it was terribly short for so many of those children who died. And I often want to draw a lesson from this. The legacy of those kids who died, and some who were terribly injured, terribly burned and so forth, is that we have better, more safe schools today in our country. And even at that time, Our Lady of the Angels, an old building, formerly was a chapel, and they rebuilt classrooms on the 2nd floor. And that's where all the deaths occurred, on the north wing of the school. And the school had was not connected directly to the Chicago Fire Department. The closest firebox was a block and a half away. So if anybody wanted to bring the fire department up, they would have to run a block and a half to get to the firebox over on Chicago Avenue. So the call came in late. The fire, as I later determined, was set by a 10-year-old kid, 5th grade student. He was a little firefighter. And I don't know how much to say about his personal life, but he was the product of his mother and his mother's father. So he was a troubled kid right from day one. He was a little firefighter. He used to set fires in garbage cans and so forth around the neighborhood. And he was questioned after the school fire by the investigators, and evidently they just passed him by. I figured he was just another kid. And the main question they were asking boys, did you ever smoke cigarettes down in that stairwell where the fire started? Well, this boy, his mother moved him to Cicero a year after the school fire, and he set fires out there. So finally, I interviewed a youth officer from the Cicero Police Department, and he interviewed this boy, and he wanted to find out about where he went to school first. He said he went to this public school out in Cicero. He said, where did you go to school before that? He said, well, I went to Our Lady of the Angels. Bingo, the light went on this youth officer's head. He said, maybe we should have talked to this boy a little more. And they did. They questioned him quite a bit. And of course, he denied having anything to do with the school fire. And the mother was so upset that she said, perhaps an attorney, and the attorney said to her, perhaps you should take your son to a lie detector guy who was a fellow by the name of John Reed. And I interviewed him. John Reed took this boy's complete confession of setting the fire. But he gave me the whole thing. He says, you know, I had a fire trouble. I said, I'm not going to live this stuff. Here, take the whole thing. And he gave me the whole report of this boy's confession, exactly what he did. He asked to be excused from his room. And the lay teacher, his room was young, fairly old. She was just new at teaching. Evidently, let him go to the washroom. When he went downstairs to the boys' washroom, we went into the stairwell where there was a big container about so high, fiber container filled with paper, trash. And he told this to John Reed. It was all in the confession, part of which is in the book, To Sleep with the Angels. They lit 3 matches to make sure that thing was really going. You figure, why did he do this? Well, he tried to get a day off of school, you know. He had no idea what was going to happen down there. That school was so old that the fire went up and through there was a pipe section down there. There was a sink with a broken pipe. And it went up through the pipe area in between the walls up into what we call a catwalk area, a 3-foot area between the ceiling of the second floor classrooms and the roof. There's about a 3-foot area there, old, dusty, full of sawdust and stuff. And he got up in there, and it was a hidden fire. That fire was hidden, and nobody saw it up there. It was a vicious fire, which eventually caused part of the roof to come down, crash down. So, in any event, this boy confessed to the thing, and he went to youth court, and Judge Solella charged him with setting the fires at Cicero, but said that the story he told the lie detector guy could not be used because he felt there were inconsistencies in it. So they sent this boy out to a youth home in Michigan. He stayed there for a while, went into the Army, was over in Vietnam and drove a truck over there. And then I got in touch with him later on, and I talked to him. And he said, oh, I don't want to talk about it, you know. And I asked him directly, did you send it to school for it? No, it's so long ago, I don't ever remember about it. But later on, the second interview, time I talked to him, I still don't want to talk about it. You know, he said, besides, and I never put this in the book, he said, besides, that's a matter between me and my confessor. So he went and told one of the priests in Our Lady of the Angels that he set the school fire, and of course the priest could not convey that information. I know the priest that he told to. But many of them, there were so many strange things that happened there. Father Hunt, I don't think he's a priest anymore. I think he quit the priesthood. I couldn't find him years later, but I did interview him early on. And he said, I was in my rectory. The rectory was right next to the school, just like the gangway away from the school. And he said, I had the flu, I was sick, and I heard these kids yelling from across the gangway in the second floor room there. That the school's on fire. So he said, I threw on a jacket, I ran over to the school, went downstairs, and went to the stairwell. This is where the fire started. Went to the stairwell, and I started to go up the stairs, and my pants were starting to catch on fire. And I asked a couple of fire investigators, I would think that stairwell would be roaring at that point, but they say, no, a lot of it had gone right up. And it went up straight that stairwell. Didn't get into the first floor of the school because they had a fire door on the first floor. But on the second floor, there was no fire door. So it got up through there and came into the hallway. And now, a lot of people criticize the nuns for not getting their kids out of the room. And I talked to Sister Davidas Divine, who had an 8th grade classroom, room 209. She said when we opened the door, I had smoke from the fire that got into the hallway. It was coming down through the all went through the windows. And that was the natural reaction. Although a couple of nuns on the other side of the north wing wanted the kids to start saying a prayer or two, but the survival instinct took over. As soon as the trances let a lot of that smoke and stuff come in, and the glass lights started to break, they all ran for the windows. So that was just a natural reaction. So I wanted to determine when this kid set the fire. And I never, to this day, I still don't know exactly what time. My feeling is he set that school fire on a 2:15 when he went down to the wash. Because that fire was burning for 15 more than that before the first alarm came out. And if you have an old building like that, a fire is such a head start, you're in real trouble. As fire Commissioner Quinn told me, he said we had about 3 more minutes. I think we could have gotten all the kids out from the second floor. The kids in the first floor all got out safely. But the hard part of trying to go the first one to stick with the angels is when I would talk to some of the parents. One mother who had a daughter who was sick that morning and kept her home. And then the little girl wanted to go to class in the afternoon, and the mother said, well, all right, if you feel okay. And she was one of the young girls that died. The story that got the real straight down to earth through came from an Italian gentleman by the name of John Trotta, who had lost his only son. John Gabe, who had just turned 13. He was an 8th grade student. John Trotta was very forthright. He was very angry at what happened there because his son was in an 8th grade room furthest from where the source of the fire came up that stairwell back. He was way in the front part of the school facing Avers, 909 North Avers. And he often thought, why didn't my son just run for those front stairs? They would have come down. But he said, he was so forthright about it. He says, when I don't know whether this is an Italian saying or not, but he says, we have a saying that if a baby of yours dies, it's like a dream. But if a young son dies, it's like a dagger in your heart. And that's what he told me. And I think it typified pretty much what all the parents felt. There's even another Italian gentleman by the name of Sarno who lost 2 of his kids there. And so I felt that, I had people tell me, why did you write this book? It's such a tragedy. I said, it's something we should never forget. 92 children. I had a family of 8 kids, went to a similar school, a little different. But I thought, I'd be angry trying to find out what really did happen there. How did this happen? Because they had a coroner's jury afterwards, and all the coroner's jury determined was, I think, 3 different kids died of smoke inhalation. They didn't determine the cause or the location of the fire. They didn't, the thing that caused it was tragedy. They didn't determine where it actually started or how it started. And of course, the Archdiocese hired an investigator. I forget his name. I talked to him. And he said it was no question about it. Somebody set the fire. The Monsignor cousin was the pastor at the time. Felt the same way. Somebody, but they never really revealed it until later on when they found out about this boy out in Sicily. So I'm trying to tell the whole story of the school fire, and I hope it was done fairly. I think the nuns basically did the best they could. 3 of them died. Joe Murray was on squad 6. He said, I went to school with her. Came from a big Irish family in the neighborhood. He said, I been at school backwards and forwards. He said, when I got there, one of the guys on the ladder truck asked me to pull the ladder around to the side of the school, the kids were starting to fall, jump out the windows. This was on the, I think it was the middle room where most of the kids died, probably most of the biggest fatalities occurred. And he said 2 kids were coming down at the same time. One was a girl and one was a boy. The boy was kind of heavy, but I said, I can't stay both of them. So I broke the girl's fall and saved her life. The boy, this one, it just hit off my shoulder and hit the hard ground. He said, I don't know whether he survived or not. And he said it was the worst thing he ever went through in his life. And I said, he says, every anniversary day, I always think of it so often. He had a large family of his own, a veteran firefighter, and he said, I couldn't talk to my wife about it, or my own kids. I couldn't talk to them about what I saw there. And some of the other firefighters mentioned the same thing, that they just didn't want to talk about what they saw. One of them saw him while his shoulder along the wall, he was dead. So, in writing a book of that nature, you have to be careful of what people tell you. You know, we all saw the same accident on a street corner up here. We might all have a little different version of actually how it happened or what happened. So you have to be careful of that.
Very interesting perspective, you know, especially at the end when John says, we all have a different perspective on it. We all bring our eyes and our history. We all reacted differently. John's daughter wrote to me last night, and she said, her name is Peggy Kunster Murphy, and that's the one her daughter was in my choir. She said, thank you so much for thinking of the Kunster family and reaching out to us regarding the event tomorrow. Unfortunately, due to our prior commitments, we're not able to attend. But we will be there in spirit, and if we were there, we would tell you how our dad, that's John, put his heart and soul into his book, To Sleep with the Angels. As kids growing up, we remember watching our dad at our dining room table, typing every chance he could, while maintaining his full-time job, he was a sports writer for the Daily News, and another side job to put food on the table and put us 8 kids through private school. Irish family, good old Irish family. This tragedy tugged at his heart. He was down at the Chicago Daily News when the call came in. Even though he was a sports writer, he was sent to the school. He'd write the book and my mom would proofread it. At that time, no one seemed interested in publishing his book. My mom passed away from cancer, and my dad put the book down. It did get published eventually many years later. We have to say every single word in the book was from my dad, except for the preface. Someone else wrote the preface. Dad made friends and stayed in touch with the firemen and some parents of the children that passed, like John Trotta, whom my brother Jimmy would go over and keep him company, even if it was to talk about sports or fix something in John Trotta's house. Trotta had a son who passed away in the fire, same age as my brother Jimmy. We think he found comfort having my brother around, so you can see why he liked him to visit. We were all very proud of our father's accomplishment. I know all my dad wanted to do was to get the story out. It ended up costing a lot for my dad and the book, and Linda, we don't need money. Enjoy tomorrow. We hope someday we're gonna get together again. And it says here, thank you for the beautiful tribute to our family and all the other families who went through this tragedies. Please feel free to share this with everyone. So I thought that was very nice. And you know what, I think it's time to take a 10-minute break, don't you? And just take a breath of fresh air, get some coffee back there. Please eat the panettone that we brought and the cookies. And when we reassemble, then we'll finish our stories with our survivors here, okay? Sounds good? Okay, thank you.